My family never treated me like their own, so when my grandmother finally acknowledged me as an equal to my golden child brother, my parents were seething. They did everything they could to fuck me over, so I did it back and did it 10 times better. Growing up, my family loved playing games. You're probably thinking I mean Monopoly, Scrabble, or even the game of life. But no, they had just one game in mind, playing favorites. When I was 7 and my older brother Tyler was 10, his birthday party had a hired DJ, inflatable water slides, and was catered from his favorite restaurant. My birthday that same year, I got a half-hearted, "Your mom wanted me to say happy birthday" from my dad, which was followed by, well, nothing. I didn't get cake or a single present, but I didn't even cry, because by that point I had already been taught and fully knew that I was less than my brother. And as we got older, the differences were impossible to ignore. I remember spending 6 months babysitting to save up for a laptop when I was 14. When Tyler saw it, he immediately wanted a laptop too and threw a fit. But instead of teaching him about saving money, my parents went out the next day and bought him a much better model than mine. I think my dad actually noticed the look of disappointment on my face, and he consoled me by advising me to stop being an ungrateful piece of crap and to be grateful for what I was given. School should have been my escape, but instead, it was simply another way for my parents to show their favoritism. In 6th grade, I had a solo in the winter concert that I practiced for endlessly. But on the night of the performance, my parents showed up at the very end. Their excuse for barely showing up was comforting Tyler after he got an eyelash in his eye. When I expressed my hurt feelings later that night, my mom said I was being dramatic and should be more understanding of my brother's health issues. Academically, nothing I did seemed to matter. I joined the debate club, maintained straight A's throughout middle school, and even won first place in a statewide writing competition. But my parents just kept reminding me I wasn't good enough. They literally told me to be more like Tyler, and only then would they love me more. Ironically, if I was like Tyler, I would have been failing. I remember when Tyler got a D- up to a C- in his Algebra 1, my parents took him out for a celebratory dinner and bought him $1,000 concert tickets as motivation to keep improving. Meanwhile, for me, my parents would ground me for coming home 10 minutes late from studying at the library. I remember Tyler would set off the house alarm at 4 a.m., reeking of beer, and they'd just chuckle before muttering their favorite phrase of all time, "Boys will be boys." In junior year, I was one of 3 students from our state selected for a prestigious summer program at Stanford. I was ecstatic. When I shared the news at dinner, my mom said, "Okay, why are you telling me this?" My dad just grunted and asked who would feed the dog while I was gone. The next day, I overheard my mom telling her friend on the phone that I was always trying to make Tyler feel bad with my fancy academic stuff. When I needed a ride to the airport for Stanford, my parents couldn't take me because Tyler had a game and they'd die before missing one of Tyler's games. So I had to ask my friend's parents for a ride. My friend's mom made a point to take photos of me boarding the plane to commemorate the occasion. She even sent me care packages during the program, something my own parents never thought to do. The college application process was another nightmare, but long story short, I got a scholarship. I tried to hide it, but then my mom found the letter and suggested I decline it because someone else probably deserves it more. Meanwhile, my parents were completely understanding when Tyler barely graduated high school and decided not to go to college. They even bought him a truck as a graduation gift. But later on, they did end up leaving me with something: a diagnosis of depression and anxiety. It took years to build my self-esteem and learn to validate myself instead of seeking my parents' approval. My therapist helped me recognize patterns of seeking external validation and people-pleasing that stemmed directly from my childhood experiences. My immediate family wasn't supportive, but I managed to build a decent life anyway. I graduated college with honors, landed a good job in marketing, and even bought my own condo by 29. I seem to be the only one who's proud of my accomplishments, but I didn't care anymore. And just when I thought the worst was behind me, it was only getting started, because that's when the next set of drama began. My grandmother on my mom's side passed away recently. She was a successful restaurant owner who built her business from scratch and left behind a substantial estate. In her will, she divided her assets equally among her grandchildren, me, Tyler, and our cousins, and her children, my mom and her brothers. My portion of the inheritance was significant, around $350,000. It would allow me to pay off my student loans, invest in my future, and maybe even start my own business someday. I was grateful for this unexpected windfall and the opportunities it would provide. Unlike my parents, my grandmother had always treated me and Tyler equally. She came to my debates and swim meets when my parents couldn't be bothered, and she always remembered both our birthdays with thoughtful gifts that showed she was paying attention to our interests. When the will was read, however, my parents were visibly upset. Afterward, they pulled me aside and told me they felt it was unfair that I received an equal share. Tyler, who still lives in my parents' garage apartment and works part-time at a vape shop, needed the money more because he was struggling. My mom pointed out that I already had a good job and a condo, while Tyler was still finding his way at 33. The subtext was clear: my success should be punished and his failure rewarded. I was shocked but tried to stay calm. I explained that Grandma made this decision and it wasn't up to us to change it. They insisted I should do the right thing and give Tyler my fair portion. When I refused, they became furious and started guilt-tripping me, calling me ungrateful and selfish. My dad reminded me of how they'd sacrificed everything for my education, though I had earned scholarships and worked throughout college to minimize their financial contribution. My mom dredged up every instance she could think of where they had helped me. She brought up paying for my glasses in middle school, buying basic school supplies, and letting me live at home during my first year of college, even though I worked part-time to contribute. She conveniently forgot about the truck they bought Tyler, the countless shopping sprees, and the fact that they still support him at 33. She didn't mention the time they refused to help me pay for a class trip that all my friends were going on, but then took Tyler and his friends to a professional basketball game the very next weekend. Things escalated quickly. My mom, who was acting as executor of the will, announced she would be interpreting Grandma's intentions and giving Tyler my entire share in addition to his own. She claimed Grandma would have wanted it this way if she had understood our unique family situation, She even suggested that Grandma had been confused in her final years, despite everyone else agreeing that my grandmother had been sharp as a tack until the end. I was devastated. This was not only clearly illegal, but also a painful reminder of how little my parents valued me. I tried reasoning with them, pointing out that Grandma had always treated all her grandchildren equally and was well aware of our circumstances. She knew exactly what she was doing, I insisted. She talked to me about her will last Christmas and specifically mentioned wanting to help all her grandchildren have opportunities. My dad accused me of speaking ill of the dead by suggesting Grandma would have wanted anything different from what my mom was proposing. I mentioned specific memories of Grandma encouraging my academic and career goals, but my parents dismissed these as misinterpretations. My mom claimed I was always twisting things to make myself look better, a tactic she'd used throughout my childhood whenever I questioned the fairness of their actions. They claimed Grandma had privately expressed concern about Tyler's future and wanted to make sure he was taken care of. When I asked why she hadn't simply written the will that way, they had no answer. Instead, my mom changed the subject, reminding me how much Tyler had struggled compared to my easy path, as if all my hard work counted for nothing. Tyler himself was awkward about the situation but didn't speak against our parents. When I tried to talk to him alone, he just shrugged and said, "Mom and Dad know what's best." Clearly, he wasn't going to be any help. He did have the decency to look uncomfortable at least, but years of being the golden child had taught him to go along with whatever our parents wanted. Feeling betrayed and hurt, I reached out to my maternal grandfather, Grandma's widower, for advice. When he heard what was happening, he was livid. He told me my parents had absolutely no right to alter the will, and that this was definitely not what Grandma had intended. "Your grandmother and I discussed this at length," he said firmly. "She wanted all her grandchildren to have equal opportunities, regardless of their circumstances." Grandpa sent me some information that cleared everything up. Apparently, several years ago, my parents had approached Grandma asking her to leave everything to Tyler in her will. Grandma had firmly refused, saying she believed all her grandchildren should be treated equally. She had even included a clause in her will stating that anyone who contested the equal distribution would forfeit their share. Grandpa told me that Grandma had been deeply troubled by the favoritism she'd observed over the years and had confided in him many times about her concerns for my emotional well-being. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents. They were shocked that Grandpa had revealed their earlier attempt to influence the will. My mom tried to defend it by saying they were only looking out for Tyler's future, but I could see the guilt on their faces. For possibly the first time ever, they seemed genuinely ashamed of being caught in their favoritism. My dad couldn't even look me in the eye. Grandpa took immediate action. He contacted the other executors of the will and their attorney. He also reached out to my mom's brothers, who were equally outraged at what she was trying to do. Together, they put a stop to my mom's scheme and ensured the will would be executed as written. My Uncle Mark was particularly vocal, telling my mom that her behavior was disgusting and that he was ashamed to call her his sister. This was the first time I'd ever seen anyone in the family directly confront my parents about their treatment of me. My parents were forced to back down, but they're furious with me. They accused me of not handling this within the family and turning everyone against them. My dad ranted about how I had torn the family apart and betrayed them. When my mom threatened to cut me out of their will completely, I told her I never expected anything from them anyway. "You've made it clear all my life where I stand," I said quietly. "Why would I expect anything different now? Now they're threatening to cut off all contact if I accept the inheritance." My dad even said I wouldn't be welcome in their home if I took money that should go to Tyler. In a particularly low blow, my mom said that accepting the money proves I never really loved them and was just waiting to profit from their death. "After everything we've done for you," she cried dramatically, as if providing basic necessities to a child deserved eternal gratitude and obedience. The extended family is divided. Some of my cousins are supportive, understanding the long-standing favoritism and respecting me for standing up for myself. Others think I should have given in to keep the peace because family harmony is more important than money. My cousin Rachel told me that while she understood my position, sometimes it's easier to just go along with things to avoid drama, a perspective I've heard all my life but I'm finally ready to reject. My mom's brothers are definitely on my side, which has strained their relationship with her as well. My Uncle James pulled me aside at a family gathering and told me how proud he was of me for standing my ground. "Your grandmother would have been proud too," he said. "She always admired your resilience." That meant more to me than he could possibly know. Tyler is caught in the middle of all this. He privately told me he feels bad and didn't ask for this, but he's not willing to stand up to our parents. He's been trained his whole life to depend on them and seek their approval, so I don't completely blame him. Still, part of me wishes he would stand up for me just this once. "I know it's not fair," he admitted during a rare moment of self-awareness, "but I don't know how to say no to them. I never have." This situation has brought up a lot of old pain and resentment. I find myself remembering all the times I was overlooked or dismissed in favor of Tyler. The missed birthdays, the school events my parents skipped, the achievements that went unacknowledged. There was the time I broke my arm in 8th grade, and my mom made me wait 6 hours for treatment because she didn't want to miss Tyler's soccer practice. Or when I graduated college with honors, and they left immediately after the ceremony to attend Tyler's recreational softball game, missing the celebratory dinner I had planned. This one incident feels like it's bringing to a head a lifetime of unfairness. While the whole situation has caused a major rift in the family, I'm standing my ground and plan to accept my inheritance as Grandma intended. My parents barely speak to me, and family gatherings have become awkward. I skipped our monthly family dinner last week for the first time ever because I couldn't face the cold shoulders and accusatory glares. My aunt called later to check on me, saying she understood why I stayed away but missed seeing me. It was a small gesture that helped me feel less isolated. Despite the chaos, a small part of me feels empowered. For the first time in my life, I'm challenging my parents' unfair treatment. I'm asserting my worth and refusing to be written off. It's both terrible and liberating at the same time. My therapist says this is a crucial step in my healing journey, learning to advocate for myself even when it's uncomfortable or causes conflict. Though I believe I'm in the right here, the family drama drama is taking its toll. I've started having anxiety attacks again, something I haven't experienced since college. I'm considering going back to therapy to help manage all this stress. Last night, I had a panic attack so severe that my neighbor heard me crying and came over to check on me. The physical manifestation of this emotional turmoil is something I hadn't anticipated. Am I wrong for refusing to comply with my parents' demands and accepting my inheritance? Should I have just given Tyler the money to keep the peace? I'm tired of being the family scapegoat, but I'm also afraid of losing my family completely. Any advice or perspective would be greatly appreciated. Update. 6 months later. So much has happened since my original post. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It truly kept me going through some difficult times. First, the legal stuff. I took the advice many of you gave and consulted my own lawyer. He confirmed I had every right to my inheritance, and that what my mom attempted was indeed illegal. He helped me document everything and prepare to take legal action if necessary. He also advised me to keep all communication with my parents in writing as much as possible, which turned out to be excellent advice given what followed. Thankfully, it didn't come to that. My grandfather and his attorney, along with my uncles, handled everything without court involvement. I received my full inheritance, and the will was executed exactly as written. My mom was removed as an executor because of her attempt to manipulate the will. The process took several weeks of tense meetings and angry phone calls, with my parents threatening lawsuits, but ultimately the law was clear and they had to back down. My grandfather's attorney was particularly helpful, explaining to my parents in no uncertain terms the potential legal consequences of their actions, including possible criminal charges for attempted fraud. The family fallout, however, is still ongoing. Initially, my parents doubled down on their position. They accused me of being greedy and neglecting my brother. They also tried to turn other family members against me, spreading rumors that I had somehow manipulated Grandma into giving me money. My mom even claimed I had always been Grandma's favorite, an ironic accusation coming from someone who had so blatantly favored one child over the other. Fortunately, most of the family saw through their tactics. About a month after the will was settled, there was one particularly ugly incident at a family gathering. My parents showed up uninvited to my uncle's house. He was hosting and hadn't invited them, and created a scene. My dad started yelling about how I had stolen from Tyler and turned Grandpa against them. My mom threw a photo album at my feet. It was awkward and horrible. It took several relatives to calm things down and convince my parents to leave. My 10-year-old cousin was in tears, and my aunt had to explain to her that sometimes grown-ups don't behave like grown-ups. I felt terrible that my family drama had affected a child. My grandfather has been my strongest ally through all of this. He shared stories about how Grandma had always been proud of my achievements, and how she specifically wanted to ensure all her grandchildren had equal opportunities. He revealed that Grandma had kept a folder of my accomplishments, newspaper clippings of academic awards, copies of my college acceptance letters, and even the program from that school concert my parents had been late for. This was both heartwarming and heartbreaking to learn. He showed me birthday cards I had made for her as a child that she had saved, along with notes she had written about her concerns regarding my parents' treatment of me. "Your grandmother worried about you," he told me one evening over tea. "She saw how hard you worked for approval that never came. She wanted to make sure you knew that someone believed in you." He shared that Grandma had actually considered giving me a larger portion because she worried about the emotional damage my parents had caused, but ultimately decided equal treatment was the best approach. "She didn't want to fuel more resentment," he explained. "She just wanted to give you a foundation to build your life on your own terms." Grandpa also took it upon himself to set the record straight with the extended family. He organized a family meeting without my parents, laying out the entire history of their favoritism, including incidents I had forgotten or never even known about. Having someone finally acknowledge the unfairness I'd experienced for years was validating, but it also reopened old wounds. He shared how Grandma had confronted my parents several times about their behavior, only to be met with denial and accusations that she was interfering. He even had letters Grandma had written to them expressing her concerns, which they had apparently ignored. As for Tyler, he finally found his voice in all this. After some soul-searching and several long conversations with our grandfather, he came to me privately and apologized for not standing up for me sooner. He admitted he knew our parents' favoritism was wrong, but he had been too afraid to challenge it. "I always saw what was happening," he confessed, "but it was easier to just go along with it than to question it. I'm sorry I wasn't braver." We had a long emotional conversation about our childhood and how it affected us both. Tyler confessed that being the golden child wasn't as great as it seemed. He never learned to stand on his own 2 feet and felt immense pressure to live up to our parents' image of him. He shared stories of times he wanted to accomplish things independently, but our parents would swoop in and do everything for him, robbing him of the chance to grow and learn from his mistakes. "Remember when I wanted to get that job at the movie theater in high school?" he asked. "Mom called them and tried to convince them to pay me more than minimum wage. I was so embarrassed I never went back for my first shift." He also admitted to feeling guilty about the disparities in how we were treated, but was too dependent on our parents' approval to ever speak up. "Every time they bought me something expensive while ignoring your achievements, I knew it was wrong," he said quietly. "But I was afraid if I said anything, they'd withdraw their support, and I had no idea how to function without it." This conversation was a turning point for our relationship. We've started rebuilding the sibling bond that our parents' favoritism had damaged. We've been meeting regularly for coffee to talk and support each other through this family crisis. Last week, we went through old family photos together, and Tyler pointed out numerous instances where our parents' favoritism was visibly evident, me standing off to the side while our parents fawned over Tyler, or celebrations centered entirely around his accomplishments while mine went unmentioned. It was painful but healing to have these observations validated by someone who was there. To everyone's surprise, Tyler announced he was going to use his inheritance to go to college. He said seeing me stand up for myself inspired him to take control of his own life. He's enrolled in a local community college with plans to transfer to a 4-year university once he decides on a major. He's considering psychology, inspired by the insights he's gained through our family therapy sessions. Our parents were shocked. I think they're beginning to realize their coddling hasn't done Tyler any favors. I'm nearly 34, he told them firmly. It's time I figured out who I am without you making all my decisions. My parents' reaction to all this has been mixed and evolving. Initially, they lashed out at both of us in anger. They tried to guilt Tyler into dropping out of college to support the family, since I had turned him against them. When that didn't work, they changed tactics. They attempted to sabotage his efforts by scheduling family emergencies during his exam week and suggesting he was too fragile for academic pressure. Thankfully, Tyler recognized these manipulation attempts and set firm boundaries. After several lengthy conversations with my grandfather and seeing Tyler's positive transformation, my dad has started to recognize how damaging their behavior has been. He's made some tentative steps toward reconciliation, even starting therapy to address his issues. He reached out to apologize, acknowledging his unfairness and asking for a chance to make things right. It's a slow process, and while I'm cautiously hopeful, I'm also maintaining strong boundaries. During our last conversation, he admitted that he had always found it easier to connect with Tyler because they shared interests like sports, while my academic achievements intimidated him. I didn't know how to relate to you, he confessed, but that's no excuse for making you feel less important. Unfortunately, my mom has been less willing to acknowledge any wrongdoing. She's still angry and sees herself as the victim in all this. She's been cold toward Tyler since he decided to go to college and barely speaks to me at all. She's made a few attempts to manipulate us, threatening to sell our childhood home if we don't come to our senses, or forgiving us if we admit we were wrong. We're both standing firm, but it hurts to see her push both her children away like this. During one particularly difficult phone call, she broke down crying, saying she didn't understand why her children were betraying her after she had sacrificed everything for us. When Tyler gently suggested family therapy, she hung up and didn't speak to him for 2 weeks. The dynamics in the extended family have shifted dramatically. I've become closer to my uncles, who have been incredibly supportive, and my grandfather. My uncles have shared stories of dealing with my mom's difficult behavior over the years, which has made me feel less alone in this struggle. My uncle James revealed that my mom had always been their parents' favorite too, and they had experienced similar treatment growing up. The cycle repeats itself unless someone breaks it, he told me. You're breaking it, and I couldn't be prouder. I've also developed deeper connections with some of my cousins who stood by me. We've started a monthly cousin dinner where we can all catch up without the drama of the older generation. These gatherings have become a safe haven of sorts, filled with laughter and genuine affection. As for me, I've been using my inheritance responsibly. I've paid off my student loans, which has given me an amazing sense of financial freedom. I've worked with a financial advisor to set up a diversified investment portfolio. I've also set aside some funds to potentially start my own business in a few years. I've been researching marketing consultancy firms that specialize in helping small businesses, something I'm passionate about, and that aligns with my professional experience. But the most significant use of the money has been paying for therapy for myself and offering to do the same for Tyler. We're both learning to set healthy boundaries with our parents and working through the trauma of our childhood experiences. It's a long journey, but I already feel like I'm developing an understanding and ability to heal from emotional neglect and lifelong favoritism. My therapist has helped me identify and challenge the negative self-talk that resulted from years of being overlooked and undervalued. I've started maintaining a journal to document my progress, and it's remarkable to see how my perspective has shifted over just 6 months. This whole experience has brought some unexpected positive changes to my life. I've learned so much about setting boundaries and standing up for myself. It hasn't been easy, and there are still difficult days, but I feel good about myself for resisting the guilt and pressure. I'm proud of myself. Last week, I was able to calmly decline a request from my mom that would have violated my boundaries without feeling guilty afterward. A small victory that would have seemed impossible a year ago. One of the most surprising outcomes has been a shift in my career path. Dealing with all this family dysfunction and going through therapy has helped me realize how passionate I am about helping others who have experienced similar family dynamics. I'm considering going back to school to become a family therapist, specializing in adult children of emotionally immature parents. I've also started volunteering at a local youth center, mentoring kids from challenging family backgrounds. Being able to provide the kind of support and encouragement I wish I'd had as a child is incredibly fulfilling. I'm even thinking about using some of my inheritance to establish a scholarship fund for kids in similar situations. Working with these children has given me a sense of purpose I hadn't anticipated. Seeing their faces light up when they receive genuine praise and encouragement reminds me of how powerful validation can be for someone who rarely receives it. My relationship with Tyler continues to improve. We have a monthly sibling day where we do something fun, just the two of us. Our hiking trip last month was the most relaxed and connected we've felt since we were small children. Without our parents' influence, we're slowly rebuilding our relationship on our own terms. He shared some of his own struggles with anxiety and imposter syndrome, issues that stem directly from the pressure of being the golden child. In turn, I've opened up about my perfectionism and fear of rejection. We're learning to be authentic with each other, without the roles our parents assigned us. As for my parents, things remain complicated. My dad is trying to rebuild our relationship. He's been attending therapy regularly and has started to recognize some of the damage his favoritism caused. We've had a few one-on-one lunches where we've had some honest, though difficult, conversations about our past and future. It's not perfect, but there's progress. Recently, he attended one of my professional speaking engagements, and for the first time in my memory, told me he was proud of me without qualifying it or comparing me to Tyler. My mom continues to resist change. She still insists she did nothing wrong and that Tyler and I should be grateful. She refuses to be in the same room with me, so she's missed several family functions. It hurts, but I'm learning to let go of my need to make her see things differently or control her reactions. As my therapist reminds me, you can't control other people's responses, only your own actions. I still hope that someday she'll be willing to work through these issues, but I'm no longer putting my life life on hold waiting for her approval. My grandfather has become a rock for both Tyler and me. He's been sharing more stories about our grandmother and how proud she would be of us for standing up for ourselves. He's always been a voice for fairness and understanding, and he's been an amazing mediator in family conflicts. Last month, on what would have been Grandma's birthday, he organized a memorial dinner where we all shared our favorite memories of her. It was healing to celebrate her life and legacy without the tension that had characterized our recent family gatherings. This whole process has taught me a lot about what family really means. I've come to see that sometimes the family you choose can be more supportive than the one you were born into. I've grown closer to my uncles and cousins who stood by me, and I've developed a tight-knit circle of friends who have been incredibly supportive throughout this journey. My college roommate, who witnessed some of the favoritism firsthand years ago, flew in for a weekend just to help me process everything. These are the relationships I'm choosing to nurture going forward. Setting boundaries and practicing self-care have become much more important to me. I'm getting better at saying no to situations that compromise my mental health, and I no longer feel guilty about prioritizing my own well-being. I've started exploring new interests and hobbies that I always put off while I was focused on trying to earn my parents' approval. I've joined a local hiking group and started taking painting classes, activities I do purely for enjoyment rather than achievement. For the first time, I'm learning what it means to do things for myself, rather than to earn someone else's validation. To anyone in a similar situation, I would say, don't let anyone make you feel bad for receiving what is rightfully yours. It's okay to stand up for yourself, even if it creates conflict. Family dynamics can be complicated, but you deserve to be treated fairly. Remember, it's never too late to start building the life you deserve. Get therapy if you need it, surround yourself with supportive people, and don't be afraid to set boundaries. Your worth is defined by who you are as a person, not by how your family treats you. The journey isn't easy, but reclaiming your sense of self-worth is possible and absolutely necessary. Thank you again to everyone for your advice and encouragement. It meant more than you know during a really challenging time. The road hasn't been easy, but I'm excited about the future and feel a confidence in myself that I haven't experienced in years. I'm looking forward to seeing where this new chapter of my life takes me, and I'm determined to break the cycle of favoritism and create healthier relationships in my own future family. Whether or not my parents ever fully recognize the impact of their actions, I know my own path forward is becoming clearer every day. As Grandma would have said, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply to remain standing when others try to push you down.